Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. In honor of Black History Month, we thought we'd pay tribute and showcase some of the great defining Black characters the world has come to love.
In celebration of Black Panther's release, it seemed best to start with some of our MCU favorites. After all, Marvel has created some of the coolest Black heroes known to man.
So without further delay, let's explore the history of the one that started it all, Black Panther, on Black History Heroes. I never freeze.
Wakanda forever.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. All right. Oh boy, Dragon. So I was just recently, I told you this like right before we went off air, but it's worth echoing right before we went on air. I was just at a book signing event with Greg Sestero, you know, not to brag. Great time. But, you know, since it was a bunch of nerds in the room, there was still a cultural fever pitch. You know, like Black Panther obviously doesn't have anything to do with the room, but, you know, of course, it's kind of the nerd subculture kind of overlapping, Dragon. And, you know, before Sestero came out, you know, when everyone was gathered around, like, what are the big points of conversation besides like room quotes and, you know, spoons and whatnot is Black Panther. Have you seen Black Panther? Oh my God, Black Panther, Black Panther. And Dragon, I gotta say, I've kind of changed my tune a little bit on the cultural impact of this movie because last time we spoke, I was, I'm kind of just sort of laying a thesis statement here, and then we'll kind of get into it. Last time we spoke, you know, I was sort of like, well, I love what this movie is doing culturally, but at the same time, there's some, there's a small but vocal minority of people who are kind of taking the extremist route with their love of Black Panther and kind of turning it into an anti-white thing. And Dragon, I gotta say, I don't want to have that as part of this conversation anymore because it's such a small minority at this point, and I feel like the overwhelming positivity and love for this movie on all sides culturally is just far outweighing that negative vocal noise, especially now that the movie's out and everyone's got a chance to see it, and it's not just people bickering about Rotten Tomato scores and everything. So I'm just going to kind of throw my political stuff out the window, Dragon. We'll definitely get political with this conversation because by its very nature, this is a very politically charged character, probably much more so than most, if not all, superheroes in comic book history. But I just want to put that out there, Dragon. I have a lot more goodwill about the fan reaction to this movie than I did a couple weeks ago. So just, you know, kind of opening things up with a goodwill statement. So with that in mind, Dragon, let's get to creation. What do you got about the background facts on Black Panther for us?
Yes. So
it starts with Fantastic Four. I'm just kind of helping you out here, Dragon, giving you an assist. So Black Panther made his debut in Fantastic Four, of course, Fantastic Four being kind of a breeding ground for other new heroes, kind of like a, you know, almost kind of like pilots in a way, like, hey, this character is going to be on Fantastic Four. Let's test him out.
Yes, he first appeared in 1966, Fantastic Four number 52. And this is around the point the Fantastic Four were introducing a lot of breakout characters and memorable storylines. Like you have, I think it was Fantastic Four number 48. Point is, it's in like the late 40s of Fantastic Four. You get Silver Surfer, the trilogy of the Silver Surfer Galactus storyline. Those three issues, which are monumentous. And like shortly after that, you get, hey, here's a guest star. There's a guest spot by Black Panther for a couple issues. And, you know, it's it just shows you, like, all the Fantastic Four was a revolutionary book for Marvel. It's the birth of the Marvel superhero, not necessarily, you know, because if you really want to be technical and split hairs, even Captain America is more under, like, the timely guard of Marvel than, you know, kind of the Marvel age, like Stan Lee age of Marvel.
Technically, isn't Captain Marvel the first Marvel hero?
Well, even so, I don't know. It's
tomato.
Yeah, it's, you know, like the whole, like, it's owned by a different company than DC absorbs it. It's a whole bag of issues. Anyway, so of course, Black Panther was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. You know, like the big two names in comics. Of course, authored the Fantastic Four and a number of other Marvel characters. You don't have have the X-Men. You don't have
Spider-Man.
You know, Hulk. Well, you have Spider-Man without these two. I'm just saying you have, But I mean, you need Stan Lee for Spider-Man. You don't need Jack Kirby for Spider-Man. But
I'm mixing up Jack Kirby with Steve Ditko.
yes. However, Kirby was, he did provide those wrong sketches of Spider-Man at the very beginning. I don't know, he was there. Kirby was there.
Oh.
Anyway, like the Hulk and et cetera, et cetera. And then you have many fantastic Marvel characters. So, basically, this is another, and kind of the theme of Black History Month or Marvel characters here. You'll notice it's like another in a series of good Stan Lee ideas. Hey, let's represent a black character in a positive light, as the skilled warrior and an African king. Let's just let's do something counterintuitive to how black characters have been perceived in comics in those early years.
Mm-hmm.
And here's something interesting. Here's just showing you kind of the marvels of Jack Kirby here. So Jack Kirby, of course, he's very well known. The guy was always he was a director as an artist. Like if Jack Kirby if the comic industry had been smart, had we been able to get to kind of where we're at now with it back then, Jack Kirby would have easily been a director, either in animation or heck, maybe even on big screens. Jack Kirby, he knew his visuals. He would have been the most gifted story artist ever. And Jack Kirby, he contributes to the visual look of Wakanda and a lot of stuff we know and we've seen on screen at this point. And Jack Kirby, in the early design phase, as much nice things as people say about Jack Kirby, they were still figuring out Black Panther in the very beginning. There's like a famous sketch that his kids have debuted a few places, like the Jack Kirby Museum. They're kind of developing that. It's like a roadshow museum type thing. And they showed the original sketch for what Black Panther originally looked like. He was a character they were kind of spitballing the name before they landed on Black Panther, like one of the potential names, I believe, was Cold Tiger.
Okay.
And Cold Tiger had this kind of the silly it was a silly costume. It was like basically you took like your generic kind of Jack Kirby square jawed character and you put him in kind of it wasn't tribal in like a cool tribal sense. It was tribal in like, hey, here's some stripes, here's some multicolors, it's just, hey, it's got a cape, no mask.
Tribal in like a pseudo stereotypical kind of way.
Basically, in a way, but then they basically simplified. They kind of saw the less is more. Like, we got to really, they took it back to the drawing board. And Kirby made strong, smart improvements. So that one, and Black Panther, eventually gets us to kind of Black Panther's popularity. So it appears in Fantastic Four and a few guest spots. He eventually kind of does that with a few other books, a few other titles, a lot of like under the radar Marvel books, like the ones on the side, not your main books, but Marvel, of course, is rich in their crossover appeal. And eventually he lands on it's almost like an actor with a TV career. He then lands in a reoccurring spot with this book called Jungle Action, which basically kind of highlighted Marvel characters who were kind of based in the jungle, like Khazar, who was, I believe, Khazar from the Savage Land. It was like this kind of like a Tarzan knockoff, essentially. It was like basically a Tarzan-esque character. I hope I'm not mixing that with the DC character who was very eerily similar to.
Oh God.
to Khazar. There's two. I'm pretty sure it's Khazar because Deadpool met Khazar once, and I think that's the name anyway. The point is, Jungle Action was the main book that basically was a Black Panther book in everything but name because he became increasingly popular, and at the time, along with the Silver Surfer, because again around Fantastic Four in kind of the early '50s in terms of number. College students, whenever Stan Lee would visit and tour colleges, they bombard him with questions about the Silver Surfer. And I presume, if not the colleges, then it would be college students love Black Panther, and you had like these glow not glow in the dark, but like these black velvet posters along with the Silver Surfer. I presume you also had Black Panther being top sellers, and the college students like, oh my God, this is something we've never seen before. Of course, this in the '60s, it's a very kind of like. You don't see a character like represented this way at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually he gets his own series based off all this popularity, down the line. It's like, oh my God, Black Panther is such a no-brainer. Let's give him his own book.
Now, Dragon, when did the sort of the cultural kind of like the Wakanda of it all come into place? Because that's the most fascinating thing about Black Panther to me is all the world building and lore attached to him.
Well, let's see. I mean, technically, even in the beginning, Wakanda was always visually kind of striking, and again, the visuals have still maintained over time. Just the classic appeal of, hey, from a distance, it's your average, it's an African village, not really much, basically it's like a seen it all type approach.
So it almost kind of like starts out like how Wakanda is hiding itself, right? Where it's like kind of just like your typical African village. And then over time throughout the comic, I assume they sort of like develop more and more details, kind of peel back the layers of it.
Well, exactly, but again, the point is always Wakanda was always defined as a surprise, and then you think you assume we're in an African village, and again from a distance looks like that. You come up close and you get to know the place after you have an encounter with Black Panther. You come to Wakanda and you realize, like, oh my god, this place is so technological.
But I assume like it started out like I assume like the MCU of it all, where it's like literally like a force field, kind of like this never gets old. I assume that came later.
Yeah, basically, like basically, you have that idea, and then you add like the logic and the reasoning behind it years later. It's just like it was a surprise, and then you add like kind of the reasons why would that be a surprise, and what can we say about that being a surprise? Like, how does that hold a mirror? Like, you had like the Silver Surfer looked into big, profound issues, and you had with, I presume, with kind of like there was an underlining commentary, but it was never like it wasn't the crux of the book, and. Eventually, where you do get that, I want to say is, and this is just a famous run, it might have been done a little bit before because you had a number of writers, even in Jungle Action. Jungle Action had there's this famous story with Jungle Action called, I believe it's called The Panther's Rage. And that's when we start getting like the very profound Black Panther stories, like, basically Black Panther in everything but name in terms of a storyline. And famously, and what we really take from the movie is the Priest run. Christopher Priest, who also who did a run on Deadpool for a while. In '98, he does a story that, he's doing storylines that are very much like they're under the Black Panther title. These are like some of the first stories we're getting under like, okay, it's it's the Black Panther title, and we're kind of looking into what does it mean to be, what does it mean to be a black superhero? That's kind of when we're starting to get into that vein with Black Panther. And again, there's some stories beforehand with like Conway and other writers. So I mean, it could have. I don't know if that's the very first place. I just know it's the most famous example of it. Like Christopher Priest, he created Everett Ross.
Now, Everett Ross, Dragon, actually, I'm not sure if we want to address this now or with cultural impact, but I feel like Everett Ross is a key piece of the puzzle of what makes Black Panther such an interesting cultural work, is that Everett Ross is very much kind of like the bridge between the two cultures.
Now, speaking of that, I'll say this much about it, then we'll probably move on to the legacy of it all, is that Ross, speaking of, he's the bridge after all, might as well, is that Ross was very intentionally designed by Priest to serve as that cultural bridge, as basically kind of having, basically a friend for T'Challa, so he could, we could basically have a friendly face from the other side of, from outside of Wakanda for him to see, okay, it's not all bad, and I can actually, basically, we had a lot of diplomacy through Everett Ross.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, not to jump ship here or anything, but the movie just captured that perfectly, beautifully.
It did. Like, Everett Ross is no dummy, and that's the point. He's not like, and I'm not calling the other character a dummy either. I'm saying he's not like General Thunderbolt Ross. Again, two Rosses in Marvel. So funny.
Or he's not like the Stan Lee general from the motion comic.
Yeah, he's not. Oh god, no, he's not. Like
that was such a delightful surprise, by the way, Dragon. It's like, oh, this isn't just a Stan Lee cameo. It's like a Stan Lee minor role.
Yeah. And it's Stan Lee getting to play a bigot, and that's something you don't see.
Yeah. Exactly.
The only time he's ever kind of
like it might be like the closest thing we get to Stan Lee playing J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah, and that's where that's coming from. He's always like he's always viewed Jameson as like something. He's vaguely he's Archie Bunker-esque. He's like not as like heavily Archie Bunker and how bigoted he is, but he's like he's very anti-teenager. He's very anti-youth culture. That's very much J. Jonah Jameson. Anyway, yeah. So Ian Ross, he's always been the expert on Wakanda, as you saw in that thing I recommended to you. So that's really Ross's role has always been. He's been that great. For any viewer who might feel alien, for any white reader or white kind of audience member who might feel alienated with Black Panther, that was kind of what Ross's role was kind of designed for, in a way of like, okay, we can kind of, it's like we get the view from his eyes, an outsider's view on Wakanda through his eyes.
And I'm not going to lie, Dragon, going into the movie, that was kind of me. Like, I was one of those, sheltered white people who, while as cool as the cultural impact of this movie was a little bit intimidated by like, is this movie made for me? Is this movie like, am I even allowed to appreciate this movie on a deep cultural level? And I feel like Everett Ross's role in the movie went a long way in terms of like, yeah, this is not just a movie that Africans and African Americans can be proud of. This is a movie about cultural unity.
Right. So let's transition to the legacy of it all. What's the legacy of kind of, you know, Black Panther's reputation within the comics industry? Like, what is Black Panther from the page? Like, how do we get Black Panther from the page to the screen? He has a big legacy, a big following, a big notoriety to the name. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I feel like this is a perfect place to bring up the actual organization, the Black Panthers.
Yes, so here's what's fascinating. So I looked into this, and again,
this is such an interesting topic, Dragon. Oh, we could do a whole podcast just based on this thing alone.
We could. I got more stuff to say about when we get to Impact, believe it or not. But we can definitely touch on the factual implications of it here, by all means. Is that
so? Can I kind of take a stab at this, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong?
Sure.
Okay, so basically, from what I understand, there were social groups that would use the image of a Black Panther, like social movements and civil rights movements and stuff like that, that would use the image of a Black Panther in their logos before the comic came out. And the comic being associated with that was just kind of a freak accident. You know, it was kind of just like a happy coincidence. But from what I understand, the actual Black Panther movement, the one that's actually titled the Black Panthers, that came about after the comics. And I want to say the comics kind of helped popularize the term as sort of like a African-American terminology in just the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah, so you got it's on the money, Tiki. It predates the Black Panther group. They both started in 60s. They both started in 66. I think it was really coincidental how they were both kind of coming out at the same time. And the main difference is that the Black Panther group, over time they did basically kind of, it was always kind of this confusion of like, oh my God, Black Panther, they create them based on the Black Panther movement. It's always been a misconception that has fed into the Black Panther movement well. And years later, again, people have been kind of going back and forth on it, because again, they did kind of like, in terms
it's
of
almost kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg.
Yeah, because there's also a thing of logos where Black Panther doesn't necessarily, I mean, he doesn't really have an honest to goodness logo, the Black Panther. Like, he's always has like the mask is very, you know, identifiable. Basically, the mask and the clip that he's had for his cape, that's been the closest thing we've gotten to a Black Panther logo. Because for all intents and purposes, it is, you know, a Black Panther. As we see in the structures of Wakanda, we have just these giant kind of Black Panther rock formations and kind of sculptures and you know, kind of carvings for our stage, like the big, you know, the panthers outside the gates of Wakanda, essentially. And again, that's very similar to what the Black Panthers have used for years. And again, what I hear, just to touch it a little bit, is that Ryan Coogler, what he did is he basically he kind of answered the age-old question. From what I hear is where he basically, Black Panther, he does kind of represent very much what those groups were. He represents kind of the Black Power movement, but it's a commentary on the Black Power movement. So basically, Black Panther, the character. I'm sorry, so many Black Panthers. I guess I just got to get it straight up. Which was
right.
So Black Panther, the character, is representing and kind of embodying the ideas of the Black Panther group, but of course, without just being a member of the Black Panther group. Again, he said as a similar idea, similar theme of like, you know, Black Power, and just kind of showing that there is a difference, and there is, you know, that and again the underlying power thing of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So beyond that, oh yes. Sorry, I'm just trying to think where I want to go with this here. Okay, well, let's see. So of course, Black Panther, first Black African hero. He's very first Black hero, and specifically African, because the misconception is that Falcon is technically the first African American hero.
Yeah, we went over that in the Falcon podcast. That's kind of an interesting kind of cultural misperception for sure. And
believe it or not, from what I've found, Black Panther, he had the first a black. Well, again, it was Jungle Action technically, but Black Panther was involved in the first graphic novel, the first Marvel graphic novel, which was a collection of Jungle Action, and it was about the Panther's raid. So he had the first story that was put into a graphic novel, which is basically like a trade paperback kind of basically a grouping of comics. Like the comic series are put into a book. And that was for the first time for Marvel. It's them doing a graphic novel.
Nice, nice.
That's a big. That's one not everyone knows about. Again, very much so.
Going back to the Wakanda of it all, Dragon. I feel like I feel like just the whole idea of the Black Panther and the world building, everything. It's such an awesome celebration of African culture, and I'm really glad we can make that distinction. Where it's not just it's not just black, it's not just black people, it's not just African Americans. It's specifically African pride, you know what I mean? And just kind of the technological advancements that most people don't think of when they think of Africa, but really in certain parts of Africa and South Africa especially, they are kind of ahead of the curve in that way. And Black Panther it's such a fascinating sort of melding of two cultures, right? Of the kind of the tribal, very ancient, very very structured civilization mixed with, sort of almost a Tomorrowland-esque kind of like, great big beautiful tomorrow, look what we can make.
Yes, I believe the term for it is, if I'm not putting words in your mouth here, I think it's Afrofuturism. Is that right?
I mean, I've never personally heard that term, but it sounds like a very on-point description to me. So,
well, that's what I've been hearing. I've heard the term is Afrofuturism, essentially sci-fi, and basically kind of an African influence on sci-fi. It's essentially what the kind of the turn of phrase is there, and yeah. Basically, when you take like Blade, for example, would be quantified as Afrofuturism, in that it's kind of a sci-fi idea of like vampires, and maybe there's an underlying statement within that. Basically taking kind of an African or African American idea and just kind of see it as like a futuristic sort of world of tomorrow, or like a what if future idea.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, a lot of course, the legacy itself, and that's a character who is, when you really think about it, definitely in the MCU as well, but I mean, I don't know how far we go in the comics. Black Panther is definitely the oldest living superhero in many respects, because it's a passed down title.
Sure, yeah. That's again, that's also Dre. I was actually kind of thinking about this today, as a matter of fact. The whole idea of, when you think about it and when you break it down, Black Panther really isn't a superhero story per se. I mean, it's got more rooted in the superhero genre than, let's say, something like Guardians of the Galaxy, which is obviously, at least from the film side of things, more rooted in Star Wars. But, you know what I mean? Like, everyone kind of touts Marvel as like, oh, they do different genres. But I really feel like the more I think about the Black Panther, especially in the movie, and also the more research I do into the into the character himself and the books and like the motion comic I watched in preparation for this and everything, really the story itself kind of takes on a more like the thing I keep going back to, even though I'm not personally a fan of this show, is Game of Thrones. It's got kind of a very much like a political hierarchy to it. There's a lot of intrigue going on. There's a lot of really cool world building to it. And I just think that level of detail and care when it comes to crafting a world and a backstory to go along with your hero, and like really it's the technology that's the power in Black Panther, and kind of the lineage and everything like that. It's not so much a superhero thing. You know what I mean? It's very much outside of that. And I feel like the actual character and how he evolved was very ahead of the curve when it comes to, branching out stuff from, would usually just be like, hey, look, he's a guy in tights just going around saving people and beating up bad guys, to something much deeper.
Yeah, I mean, it is a position of authority and power, because you could either look at, I mean, I think there are some stories that might examine like a slight difference between these, but for all intents and purposes, the version of Black Panther I think we're all comfortable with is Black Panther is the title of king, as well as like the most skilled warrior in the land. So you need both to be in that leadership role. Sometimes they'll say, okay, there's the king, and then the most trained warrior is the Black Panther. So either, the point is, the Black Panther is a very revered figure in Wakanda, and when you take that character out of their environment, out of like kind of their basically, when that hero is in the public eye, when Black Panther is going all across the world, and particularly in the comics, when he kind of joins the Avengers and he's primarily stationed in New York, that guy becomes a superhero.
Sure.
Yeah, in the public eye, as defined by our standards, but in his own standards, that superhero is revered as as king, or again, like it's very much how I'll take Shape of Water for example. Shape of Water again, it's not a comparison. So take Shape of Water for example. You take a character that could be identified as like a various other like what do you define? It could be defined as a monster. It could be defined as a monster, defined as a god, defined as a potential primordial creature or an alien creature. You don't know. You have all these sorts of like labels we put on things, and again, it just depends what context or what location this icon is at.
Mm-hmm.
Also, again, it's the other feats and it's kind of the big things that have bolstered kind of Black Panther these years. Is that one? I mean, one of the most memorable things of Black Panther is that in his first appearance in that Fantastic Four appearance is that he beat the Fantastic Four single-handedly. He took all four of them at once. Not even Doctor Doom can do.
It's kind of that's also kind of echoed in the episode of that Avengers animated show you sent me, where in the opening segment of that show he takes out all the Avengers.
Yes, and also a little fun fact for that. I showed Tiki for the record. I showed him the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Hero episode, and I really explained and. Black Panther had an appearance in an episode where they basically seated him there so they could do this episode called Panther's Quest, where he saved Captain America. He saved Captain America's life from Baron Zemo, much like he does in Civil War, which is the same. So Tiki, that's the same character. That's Baron Zemo. That's what it looks like in the comic what he was fighting there. I thought it was like a little funny there. Anyway, yeah, so that's the episode I showed him, which includes Man-Ape. Basically, it's a good sampling. If anyone's a fan of the movie,
like you say, like Man-Ape in that episode was your standard for what the movie should be like. And I gotta say, watching the episode, it's like the movie just absolutely he leaps off the screen.
Yeah, and again, speaking of Captain America, again, like the big claims of fame, the man single-handedly beat the Fantastic Four, as Steve is also seen in the motion comic. He's held his own against Captain America. Yep. Even in Civil War, we could see that he can definitely hold his own against Captain America. And there's this famous issue in the comics. They couldn't necessarily. I mean, now they can get away with it, but back then they couldn't, honest to goodness, call it the same thing. But essentially, Black Panther took on the KKK in the comics. It's a powerful issue, and they had to basically they could use KKK, but it couldn't be Ku Klux Klan. It had to be the different like alliteration thing. But it was the same thing. But still, it was like it was real kind of cutting edge storytelling of like, oh my god, we can get away with this even if we have to call it anything but its name, but still we'll be able to tell these powerful stories. Which again, Marvel's famous for like kind of skirting past the Comics Code Authority on certain things, and it's always been so again, it's great that we can have those moments there. I haven't read that story. I just heard about it. I would love to see that. That image just sounds powerful to me. Just three hooded figures in like breaching on Wakanda most likely, and just seeing Black Panther taken out. That'd be so satisfying and cool. I gotta tell you, how that sounds. Let's see. And also the stories. Just speaking of that story, just the stories, especially the Panthers. The Panther's Revenge. I was speaking of with that Jungle Action graphic novel. The stories of Black Panther are heralded by many black writers and black artists, like Dwayne McDuffie, who is he's one of the best, the finest black writers we've ever had. Just period. And unfortunately, he passed away, I think in 2009 or 2010. He one of the most talented writers you'll ever meet, and he's responsible for a lot of he created Static from Static Shock. He created various other great characters. I spoke highly of whenever we'd have. He co-founded Milestone, which was basically a line all about the minority and the black as well as minority characters. We didn't see all that much in comics. It was an imprint full of those characters. So Black Panther, obviously being the original, got a lot of attention with his early stories and what those stories inspired, like that. Getting a comics company based on all those underrepresented characters.
Mm.
Okay. So, yeah.
All right, so let's kind of transition into the MCU now, and I feel like Black Panther overall, he makes his appearance in a very crowded movie, Dragon. So it's kind of it's an interesting I feel like his appearance in Civil War almost kind of fits his character, where it's not the most flashy thing in the world, but man, is it cool, and it really stands out. You know what I mean? It's not really trying to be the coolest thing in the room, but ultimately it kind of is just by its very nature.
The funny thing is, before Spider-Man was announced, and essentially his role is quite similar. Black Panther, he does serve the Spider-Man role in the Civil War story, and he kind of, as an effect, he kind of absorbs the. Bear in mind, Spider-Man still definitely got got a lot of attention in Civil War, but he kind of.
But I feel like if they had the rights to Spider-Man before they wrote Civil War, then it would have been a little bit more equally distributed between Black Panther and Spider-Man. Whereas, as we see now in the finished product, it's very obvious. Like it's like, oh, we have Spider-Man. We really need to write him into a couple awesome scenes.
Exactly. The point is he kind of absorbs kind of the additional popularity and attention. Especially if you were tracking the hype of Civil War before, those like that big reveal of Spider-Man is going to be in this. You have that going into it. Okay, so Black Panther's kind of serving the role like he's identifying with, he's on one side and then he's transitioning over to the other side through the course of the movie. But so his role in Civil War, the introduction we have to him is he's very much the dutiful son on a revenge mission. And we the memorable things for me I love his appearance in Civil War. I love the costume. I love everything about Black Panther and Civil War so much. And again, I've bored Tiki to tears with this, but for me, as much as everyone loves the airport scene, for me, one of my favorite scenes. I love the ending of Act 1 in Captain America: Civil War, where we have this fantastic chase scene. Where
okay, for the record, there's been plenty of other Marvel-related things that have bored me more than you talking about the chase scene.
But still, folks, this chase scene is great. I don't know if it's probably because I love Winter Soldier so much. I don't know why. It's a great capper to Act 1, where
right, in a way, I've kind of like turned around where it's like I almost feel like the chase scene is better than the airport scene in some ways. Like the airport scene is definitely flashier and has the more memorable like wow moments in it, but the chase scene is just such a well done, pulse pounding action beat.
I mean, think of it. Again, the chase scene has, it has like another great hallway scene, but on the big screen for Marvel, when we go from the stairway of the more of a stairway scene than a hallway scene. But you know what I mean? It's kind of in that vein of like you have like an awesome kind of hallway scene we're used to in Netflix shows. But on the big screen, it kind of escalates, and of course, like how can this scene get any better? It's like Winter Soldier, basically like Winter Soldier fleeing the German authorities, the Interpol. And like, how do we make this scene even better? Black Panther's coming after him under the presumption that he has killed his father. He's on a revenge quest, and oh my god, it gets better and better. And we have all these great beats and all these great spectacles. Again, they keep topping each other, and like Falcon, like he tips over a helicopter. Like they're going through this tunnel. When we get into the tunnel, that's where things.
Oh yeah, the tunnel is absolutely. Oddly enough, the tunnel kind of like calls to mind Back to the Future Part 2 more than anything else.
Yeah, you're right. It is. It is vaguely. It's like the big climax of two with Marty and Biff with the hoverboard. Yeah, and it's great.
I know totally. It's very different, but.
And look, I mean, the point is, you have like space like Winter Soldier, like stealing a bicycle, they came out wrong. Stealing a motorcycle with one arm and one foul swoop. He just he takes a guy's motorcycle and he plops himself on it. He's driving off again, all in like that fantastic one shot. And of course, the thing that now, knowing more about Black Panther, that I learned going to the movie from that death battle, I learned about that he actually had powers. I had no idea he had powers. Just thought, okay, he's a guy in a suit, very well trained. He's the most skilled warrior in the land. I get that. But, he was running so fantastic. Everyone was kind of like the one, they're trying to take the nitpickers, like in those videos of like, hey, here's all these things secretly wrong with the movie, saying, how can he run so fast? And of course, the reason is he does have powers. He has the powers that run as fast as a panther, as well as the additional strength of a panther. And just for me, I'm drifting off into a few of things. And my point is, the ending of the chase is what gets me. Is where Black Panther, he's holding his own. He is very impressively holding his own. He's clinging on to cars. He's doing what he does best. And it's the ending to this scene where Captain America, following Toe, as like an explosion is going off, about to seal him in the tunnel. Cap mid-charge as the Black Panther is caught up to, he's flung out of the tunnel right before he's caved in there. He grabs Bucky, like he takes him down, and like he's a goner. Captain America, he comes out of he runs out of the car as it's tipping over. And he just runs with that breaking stride. He throws Black Panther off of his friend. Black Panther lands on his feet because that's one of his powers. He very much like a cat or a panther, if you will. He lands on his feet. and still and ready. He's ready to go on the attack, and just Cap shield up and ready to go. It's like that great bit of tension. Like everyone just then of course it comes to a close with Cap, you're a criminal. That whole thing, just that whole
right.
Your Highness, the diplomatic immunity. It's a fantastic sequence. It's just it's supercharged and it's wonderful. We get a demonstration of the bulletproof suit, and importantly, and the last thing I'll go on for me is that importantly. It was everything that I knew about. Again, my main foray into Black Panther was very much Tiki's foray into Black Panther. With they had the Ultimate Avengers animated film.
That's absolutely where I first heard about Black Panther, was through that movie.
Like for me, there was Ultimate Avengers 2, but more so again, I was familiar with them from Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and that's a really good representation of Black Panther. Again, I missed out on like the episode with the flowers. I had no idea about the powers, but the gist of Black Panther, I knew, and I knew that he appeared in Fantastic Four. Like those three things are pretty much the gist of what I knew. And what I loved, so everything was represented there with the bulletproof suit, the vibranium, all of that, and the fact that he had this, he had that respectable royal flair about him. I love that he was interesting out of the suit. And that's always something important with the Marvel characters, that you care about him outside of the suit, where he was just a guy who lost his father, and he was just kind of honoring his father. Like the minute he put on that ring, as we know now, that's the ring of a king, which now he's absorbing his father's responsibility, and he's, don't worry, Andrew Romanoff, I'll kill him myself. Again, it's very it's very pivotal, and he recognized he wasn't just on a blind revenge quest. He did. By the end, he realized the fault in this. So again, I love that he just had that royal flair and that respectability and that intelligence that T'Challa always had.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very solid introduction. Again, even if we had never gotten the Black Panther movie, that's for me, that was perfect. Just like what we got there. It's everything I know about the guy. It's good representation. Be great to get more, but just in case we don't, I'm happy.
Okay, so let's see. How about the overall appeal, Dragon? Now, I'm glad you mentioned the diplomatic thing, because I definitely think that's what makes him stand out. Kind of the regal, sort of like the serious tone, and I feel like the great thing about kind of the evolution of Black Panther in the MCU is the first appearance in Civil War. He is very much kind of that stoic sort of like, he's literally like the straight arrow of that movie. Like he does not freaking crack a smile the whole movie. But then what I love about the Black Panther movie is that while he still maintains that stoic quality to him, he's got, good one-liners, and you see kind of him bounce of course, Shuri is the great kind of humanizing factor for T'Challa in Black Panther, but there's just like certain lines that he has, like, I never freeze, and like, this never gets old. It just certain, you know what I mean? It's like, I feel like as you peel back the layers of T'Challa, he's someone
he's a human guy
respectable at his job, but he's not afraid to loosen up in the right company.
He has those human connections, and again, Black Panther T'Challa very much is his supporting characters. That's where a lot of his character and personality comes from. I mean that in a good way. I just mean that he is very much the connections that he forges in Wakanda, and that Wakanda is the character of the Black Panther. Therefore, it is kind of channeled through T'Challa. We get the layers of, again, like Black Panther is just he's kind of the embodiment of Wakanda, but T'Challa is the connection to Wakanda.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that with this character. I love that he is, and what we see in the MCU confirms is that he is in many ways he's a sampling of all things Marvel yet different, like things that we've seen. Again, he's very much kind of in many ways he's kind of a combination of a Captain America or an Iron Man. But again, you could see elements of that where, again,
well, he's got kind of the aspirations and the moral code of Captain America with the tech of Iron Man. So yeah, I can definitely see it's kind of a nice blend of the two, which makes his role in Civil War all the more appropriate, kind of being in between the two factions.
Certainly, and like of course, we have he's at the technical peak. He's at the technological peak with the vibranium. He's a king, and as I was getting with Civil War, again, I love that he's not too prideful, but he means business. That's the straight arrow quality you're talking about. Is that again, he's not never, and I love that I've never had to see this with Black Panther, and all the ones that all the iterations that I've seen. He's never like what we usually have to do to create conflict in Wakanda from time to time, where you have like a council of elders or someone saying, "No, that's not the Wakandan way." Like he's the guy. T'Challa is for progress. He's always for progress. He's always for, he'll evolve with the idea. He'll realize that he's not just going to be like a blind king. He's not going to be like the guy saying, this is the way we do things. I don't care what anyone's telling me. I'm going to dictate the terms. Like he means business. That means he's not going to compromise. Like he's willing to work out. He's willing to be diplomatic, but he won't compromise. If that makes any sense, he'll be diplomatic. Like he'll make sure he goes to the proper channels. But he won't just like he won't like show his belly at the end of the day. He's very, and again, while he is still all those things, as I was saying, he's very relatable and with a good heart. Ethically, I love how ethically he's grappling with the traditions, tradition versus what is right, and I love that as something we see in the Black Panther movie with T'Challa. He always has that attitude and confidence that makes him. That makes him a perfect yet somewhat static character,
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I feel like his surroundings are kind of like what makes him change, not so much his overall personality. He's a very grounded individual, you know what I mean? He's very much his worldview will change, but his overall demeanor, his overall, way of looking at things won't.
It's like he's I'm not saying that he doesn't change. I'm just saying that he's
No. I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
You're right. He is very much in connection to the people. Again, like politics will change, but the guy won't. And again, like the politics would dictate kind of the response. But regardless, whatever the choice is, whatever he does make, again, that attitude and confidence is very much a sell point of that character. It's like a guy who commands respect and very much, as you see, earns respect. Like, okay, this guy, he knows what he knows what he's doing, and we know he's coming from a good place with that good heart. So whatever he's doing, I get where he's coming from, and I support it to a degree,
Mm-hmm.
So let's see, just real quick, a little reflection on how he's grown. He's only had 2 movies, so it's not going to take that long.
Right.
So
I feel like we've already kind of covered a little bit of that already. So kind of just
to hit like the 2 like bullets on Black Panther are going to bounce right off. So like the 2 hypercharge our moments. Let's say hypercharge our vibrating moments. So in Civil War, again, as we said, he's a son on a revenge quest, and he's making amends. And I love that we got to highlight the Civil War. I love that he tries to make amends for his mistake at the very end with Bucky. He was made to look a fool, and as a show of honor and respect to Captain America, I'm going to help your friend. I was tricked like the rest of us were, and I didn't help the situation. I'm taking responsibility.
And of course, that whole thing is very much going to play into Infinity War. I feel like it's been boiling over for a couple movies now.
Absolutely, and we definitely got kind of a tip off with like where we might be going with that from like the trailer and with the the nickname that Bucky has. Within White.
Granted, I have the nickname means nothing to me, Dragon. I'm sure it has everything to do with the comics. But when I first saw that post-credit scene, it's like, it's another one of those post-credits where it's like, all right, they dropped a name, and I'm sure it means something for comic fans.
Just the point, look, just simply, it just means when we see him leading that army in the trailer, that means people in Wakanda are gonna like, hey, it's Bucky, we like Bucky, yeah, let's call him White Wolf, all right,
Sure.
Essentially, that's it. Like, just give him a nickname and they allow him to lead an army. They basically shows that they trust Bucky. That's essentially what that means. I don't want to bore you with all the the comic details, just like how we kind of. Anyway, it's not important. Anyway, so Black Panther. Of course, when we get to Black Panther, so Black Panther read a place with the Chuz, kind of mapping out his arc here.
Actually, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I feel like now is a good place to kind of lean into the actual politics of the movie, if you don't mind taking off the frickin' kid gloves for literally the first time in the channel's history.
I thought you're kind of flip-flopping on me, man.
I don't want to talk about the politics of the reaction to the movie. I want to talk about the politics as they are displayed in the movie itself.
Oh, sure. What do you got?
Well, it's Dragon, I find the movie itself super interesting because, oh man, I could write a whole essay about this, but in a way, I feel like this is going to sound super weird, but I feel like T'Challa's journey in Black Panther is kind of like going from one side of a political spectrum to another side. And let's just say, without name, I don't want to kind of get into certain political parties, but one side of the political party that he starts out on is not very popular these days. With the just to put it simply, Dragon, the way that Wakanda is represented in the movie, while not in a negative light, is kind of like representative of, you know, kind of the isolationist attitude that our country kind of goes through in certain respects, you know, where it's like, we can't harbor other people's problems. We have all these resources, but other people are just going to drag us down with us. Again, Dragon, I'm kind of dancing on eggshells with this one. This is new territory for me, talking about politics. I'm not sure exactly where to go with this, but I feel like the movie is really an interesting kind of call to arms where, where it's basically saying, hey, there has to be a happy medium. We can't bear the burden of everyone. And I think that's very important too. Again, I have my own political leanings here when it comes to immigration and whatnot. Obviously I'm not like a, pro-Trump or anything, but well, look, I think we need to have our limits is all I'm saying.
Well, regardless.
Go ahead.
Well, look, regardless, whatever political leanings anyone has, looking at through a Marvel kind of political context, you just look at the world, and again, they don't explicitly say this. I've always expected this, and again, with that Doctor Doom pitch, I always keep putting out there is basically kind of an evil, basically, of course, like how do we get basically Doctor Doom's like an evil version of Black Panther, like a Black Panther kind of gone down a villainous path. Essentially, would be my pitch.
I feel like the movie, while it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't necessarily portray it in a negative light per se. It does kind of lay the breadcrumb trail of like, this is where this could lead if we're not careful.
Essentially, I guess my point is that Wakanda is a place that, again, if you take kind of kind of a somewhat kind of isolationist kind of standpoint, or basically you take a standpoint of like, you want non-involvement, and we're just going to keep to ourselves, which, as we see, again, is somewhat of a smart move. Without worrying about the world's problems, just kind of focusing on themselves and the technology they've kind of stockpiled for themselves, and they've kind of developed it and evolved it to kind of the fantastical peak of like, oh my god, we can't get again the Afrofuturism. We built it up to this place of it's a Shangri-La, and again, they didn't get into this in the movie, but in the motion comic that I've sent, by the motion comic sent is famously, I should have mentioned this in Legacy, but real quick. A big claim to fame Black Panther also has is that there was a series, one of my go-to book for Black Panther. I've read this before the movie, so I should have also mentioned that. But it was, I read it before. It was a series in 2005 called the graphic novel is called Who is Black Panther. It was like the first 6 issues of John Romita Jr.'s run. Of Black Panther. It was really good, and it was so popular they kind of it took years, but they turned it into a motion comic series that was it kind of chopped up.
Dragon, it's funny because I thought it was like, because I've watched other motion comics in research and preparation, and usually they've been very well done, but they've been fan projects, right?
No, this was
like I very much wasn't expecting like, hey, Alfred Woodard, Jimon Hutsu, hey, Stan Lee cameo. This is like a legit Marvel product.
Yeah, this is released. I mean, they call it an animated series. Really, it's a motion comic, but it was kind of marketed as a Black Panther animated series. That was like it was separated into 12 episodes. Like they chopped it up a little bit more, so it was like a short, it was like a web series.
Iron Man animated series. This has a kick-ass theme song.
Right. And then basically I want to say it was like aired almost like shorts, almost like a web series, but it was aired on TV. They aired on, I believe it was
so kind of like the original Clone Wars.
Yeah, pretty much like the original Clone Wars, and it was like I forget. I think it was BET. I'm pretty sure it was on BET. There's a chance it could have been on Spike on Spike TV. I'm pretty sure it's BET though. They aired this and they commissioned this. And essentially, that's something you can find on in various formats. You can even get the book too. It's a great book. I recommend. Only difference is I think you get like an epilogue in the animated one. I think it's the only difference that you have an epilogue. Basically, it ends with him kind of like Black Panther getting into his big battle at the end. Then it just ends there where he says, like, you can leave.
Mm-hmm.
And then the book has kind of an epilogue. If you want more Shuri, you're gonna just watch the animated version. And you get the voices, get Alfred Woodard, you get an excellent cast, and it's
also, it's going to sound like kind of weird, Dragon, but I have grown so fond of the South African accents that permeate throughout Black Panther. There's just something so pleasing to the ear about those accents. I don't know, it's I'm not trying to like stereotype or anything, of course, but
well, I gotta tell you, the more because I keep
dignified accent, you know what I mean?
I will say this though. Again, one, I think everyone collectively, especially us, Shuri, we love her to pieces, and I didn't know this was a meme. I honestly I didn't know, and because people keep quoting it, and the whole "What are those?"
I had no idea that was a meme either, Dragon.
Yeah. It's the shit. Like, so there's some person was recording like a cop, and they're focusing on the shoes and asking like, there's just some guy shouting, "What are those?"
I really don't care that it's a meme because I feel like that fits with Suri's personality.
Yeah, that's the thing. It does, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, honestly, I keep hearing like Shuri lines like that's kind of the accent you're doing it there. I'm just like, I don't know what it makes me love Shuri even more. I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's
absolutely.
And again, let's not.
Like she name drops Coachella at the end of the movie, for God's sake. She's
in
Disneyland
and Disneyland.
Yeah, and Disneyland. By the way, Drag, that's totally a web series I want to see. Just T'Challa and Shuri at Disneyland.
That would be great. Even better. Shuri and let's just say something last minute comes up, but T'Challa has to bow, but he sends a replacement Everett Ross and Shuri in Disneyland.
Oh yes, that'd be wonderful.
Okay. I love those two paired together so
Everett
much.
Ross is like less into it, but he's like going along with it because he likes Shuri. He's like he wants to show the kid a good time.
And look, I know like there's a different character who portrays her, but now in the comics we have we have a black teenage girl, Iron Man, and I tell you again, Shuri. Again, I know it might tick off some fans.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
It would tick off fans who are probably like fans of that specific version of her. But again, based off the same idea, it's the teenage, teenage girl in the Iron Man armor. Then Shuri would have to be because she's the smartest character in the MCU.
That would be Dragon. I would go gaga over a full movie of that.
Again, like the diehard fans might be ticked off, but I love that idea. I would love to see her, don the suit, or like again, maybe not be like definitive, but do her own Iron Man suit after meeting Iron Man. Just basically, she does adopt the Black Panther moniker. Well, she did her own improvements of it and basically modeled after Iron Man. Maybe she has like an arc with him in the movie, and then she kind of models it after him. I don't know.
And I gotta say, Dragon, after some thinking and kind of stewing on the movie, I feel like seeing Shuri interact with Tony Stark has kind of replaced the potential Groot versus Hulk fight is like my most anticipated interaction in Infinity War.
I can't wait to see Tony Stark gobsmacked at this girl. I can't wait to see him just like mouth hanging open, like, oh my god, I'm spinning my wheels here. This girl is. Like I feel so old now.
It just kind of writes itself. You know what I mean?
I just can't wait to see Tony Stark just feeling so old around this girl. Like, oh, I feel so outdated. What happened to me? My phone from the first I just turned sideways. How advanced is that? Anyway, okay, my point is of bringing up the motion comics. The motion comic also kind of adds like an extra layer to it where, will kind of actually, cure diseases. They actually had a cure for cancer at the ready.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at it like that, it's looking at so again, being isolation, it kind of has allowed them to evolve to a ridiculous peak of basically these guys know if vibranium works, so they could channel in more ways than just as Ultron has put it. Well, the most versatile substance, again, versatile being the keyword, the most versatile substance in the world, and they turn it into a frisbee.
Right.
So again, vibranium has many things you could utilize it for, many different kind of not occupations, application. This one. Different applications. So again, like being in isolation, there was, but I think in this thing, I think it definitely expounded upon with the Dr. Doom is that there's a potential of you have all this stuff, and like if you ever, it's the fear from the outside world that could poison like a pure idea of like, hey, we just don't want to get involved. We don't want to. We could. looking at through Marvel context, like again, like a Doctor Doom would, is like, hey, look what's going on there. Tony Stark in America, he builds Ultron because he got curious. I don't want to risk that. I mean, you've seen like guys are duplicating the arc reactors. People are trying to steal tech. Look at that stuff on Coney Island, that plane that went down, and because all this tech that was just flying through the sky. They're very reckless with this stuff. I don't want to risk any. I'm not going to let any of our stuff get out. And again, it'd be like a Doctor Doom look at it, and you could imagine the same thing with Wakanda. Like, no, we're not going to let any of our sweet technology out because it's going to fall into the wrong hands very easily, as it tends to do in the Marvel universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which again explains that.
Kind of a reoccurring theme with the MCU, right?
That's what I'm saying. So Wakanda, and again by proxy, like Latveria possibly could definitely be smart for having that viewpoint. Only one could get like with the smart cover story, we're a third world country. We just don't want we don't want to burden anyone. They have to keep it a secret to protect their interest. Latveria, I would assume was like they'd have like a backstory of like, hey, we're like these guys, they had like if they're a known entity of like these guys are isolationists, and they'd be seen as, it's like North Korea. They're stockpiling weapons. We can't trust these guys. We got to keep eyes on them. And that's the position that Wakanda would risk if they were a known entity. It's like, they have all the stuff and they're not sharing it. So there's always that paranoia. It's always that Cold War paranoia you could have if someone's ahead of the curve over the other guy and they're not sharing, they're not getting involved. You always have that political paranoia. So, yeah.
Okay, well, I feel like that went from more of a bounce to something a little more long-winded, but regardless, Dragon, let's get into the defining moments. And again, I feel like since there's only 2 movies of Black Panther, we're kind of just sort of spinning our wheels on the same stuff over and over. So let's...
Real quick, I just wanted to there's bullet points on real quick.
Yeah, really quick. I kind of want to...
So again, T'Challa goes from mourning his father to accepting how Wakanda's secret has hurt people. That's the crux of where we're going in the movie here, which kind of leads to going public. He accepts his role of king, warrior, and diplomat. That's kind of where we go with him in Black Panther. So
Okay, so defining moments. I mean, you already, very much went into detail about how cool the tunnel chase is, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on that. But, I feel like that is very much kind of like the flagship, kind of like Black Panther, planting his flag in the MCU, like, hey, this is where I'm coming here to play,
Here's a big moment. We got for me, I got one big moment left with Civil War. We got to go into the ending with Zemo, where he has a great line that, again, foreshadows what we see in Black Panther in a wonderful way, where he says, where I come from, we don't believe death is the end. And, of course, he prevents him from committing suicide with the bulletproof kind of hand in front of the bottom of his chin. And he says, the living aren't finished with you yet. Mm-hmm. That's a huge moment, because it's kind of a moment we don't really always have with him in the comics, where T'Challa is, don't realize, he's forward thinking and he's a smart king like that. But at the same time, I love that it's a guy who is all about, I'm going to kill this man, I'm going to avenge my father. But he realizes he would just play into what he wants, and it's not the way to go. It's not the right way to go. And again, this would bring and he's also thinking like a diplomat, like his father kind of wanted him to kind of think more in a kind of a broader sense.
Yeah, and in a way that kind of, it's sort of like an eerie foreshadow to the Killmonger situation, where, of course, the big thing that people take away from Killmonger is, hey, Killmonger's more relatable than T'Challa, for God's sakes. I don't want T'Challa to kill him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, sparing your bad guy in that context is like, this guy was created from a political, like, the Avengers, they kind of left hand after this big uproar happened. So it's kind of him again, foreshadowing that place we go with Killmonger, where it's like, hey, these situations aren't black and white. They aren't like, this guy did it for complicated reasons. And he might have heard that phone message for all we know. It's like, okay, they're complicated.
I think the Killmonger thing is like the perfected version of what they were trying to do with Man of Steel and that ending.
Yeah,
coming from someone who kind of like defended the Man of Steel thing.
Well, sure, yeah, but again, it's kind of different, though. I don't want to get into the specifics of that, but
yeah, well, I'm just saying the whole idea of like, like the turmoil over having to kill your enemy.
Well, yeah, sure, okay, I got you there, but all right, sure. All right, let's see. So again, like the big point, yeah, that's a big moment. It shows like the enlightened king. You know what we very much like, and what I very much like about the child is the guy who's for progress and for kind of like he's no one's stooge in that way. He's not going to play into this guy's hand. So it's very very good moment there. Again, use the vibrating.
I feel like, of course, we've talked blue in the face about Shuri, but I feel like his first scene with Shuri is a very important, like, kind of pivot point in his role in the MCU, where, as we've said, we really get to see his human side come out. All it, like, Drake, I love how natural it is. You know, how, like, you just get the feeling these two have been at each other's throats lovingly their whole lives. You know what I mean? The chemistry is just impeccable.
Sure. The bridge off of the my last point I was making with the whole like living on finish with you again, kind of the empowering like, hey, a guy who's stopping kind of a suicide of a bad guy. That's also kind of a big thing in the world we live in today. It's kind of a cool moment you see there. But in addition to like sparing your enemy, we have a great moment with Manape because we all fell in love with Manape in M'Baku, Manape, and
I feel like Manape is kind of like the he's sort of like the dark horse of Black Panther, where he's almost kind of like the Yondu of Black Panther in a way, where no one was really expecting much from him, but he kind of stole the show.
Yeah. Again, Manape, I was expecting to be just kind of the clear cut, bad guy, where he's just going to be the guy. He's either going to be the guy who he had a fight with him to try to get the crown. He fails.
Like Yondu, he kind of came away being so much more interesting than just a clear cut kind of like, second level antagonist.
And he ended up becoming lovable like Yondu as well.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, I love that move of sparing Manape and just like, again, like the child making the
smart by the end point. Of the movie, Manape's on the council. And I like how they don't make a big point of that. It's like if he's there if you look for him, but they don't be like, hey, Manape, you're my best bro now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're going to see him in Infinity War, too.
Oh, I'm so excited for that.
But I mean, yeah, it's like that move, like again, like the child saying again, like, hey, crap, what's the not to you basically tell him to surrender, concede, surrender, like give up, your people need you. Again, him reminding him that his people need him, and I think I love him thinking as an effective leader in that moment of like, hey, your people need you. Don't die for nothing. Don't die for like just because you disagree with my ruling style. Don't put your people in that. Don't leave your people without a leader.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like Everett Ross taking the bullet is a pivotal moment for T'Challa's character arc in terms of like, seeing past his his own prejudice.
Yeah.
Not to say that he was prejudiced before, because of course he's had positive encounters with Captain America and everything, but obviously in terms of the actual like isolationist political element of ruling Wakanda, that's the big kind of pivot into where we get to at the end of the movie is Ross's self-sacrifice.
Yeah, again, Ross is like, I gotta basically he is not a MacGuffin, but he's, I guess, the symbol of like we're gonna let he's the foreshadowy symbol of we're going to introduce the world to Wakanda through one man who I trust, one man who represents the good of the good of the political good that of what we could do for the world. Like, okay, here's a guy who's he's been on my side. I've been playing diplomatic with him. I haven't really cultivated a real honest to goodness friendship with him, but he's done something good. And knowing that I can save this guy, that's not the responsible thing to do. So I got to do the heroic thing here. No, that's really. You're right. It's a really good moment of like T'Challa making a choice that he knows is going to bite him in the butt. He's coming back empty-handed and with a bigger problem on his hands. So again, he's at risk to himself. It's always a mark of heroism, doing something at risk to your happiness or risk to your life.
Sure.
A big one for me, and this is like for anyone who says I've heard this complaint a little bit. Now again, I think it's been easily refuted, especially this thing I think goes away on multiple viewings from what I've heard. But again, for me, it was never a problem for him. But some people have said, T'Challa doesn't really go through enough, and he's kind of Mr. Perfect in the movie, and I don't see that. And a big reason.
Greg, I brought this up before. I feel like the one point in which I agree with that is that he kind of gets written out of his own movie for like a 20-minute chunk of it.
I think that's what makes
like the one pacing thing for me. That's kind of like I don't want to say a black mark on the movie, but it's like a noticeable flaw.
Sure. And I think that's the scent that kind of gets everyone to thinking about T'Challa's character. You're right. I'm saying that's the thing. It's so weird, too, because
that was like more it bothered me more the first time I saw it. I will say, like the first time I saw it, I was like, okay, this is a problem.
It's like for me that moment.
Second time, it's still like I was like, all right, this isn't great, but it's not like it doesn't kill the movie or anything.
I mean, again, for me, I don't know what it is. That moment is so hard for me to describe because it doesn't feel like necessarily. It's like a no-win situation almost, where you kind of have to take him out, but it's like it always feels like there's something off about that, you know?
I mean, as I said in the spoiler cast, I think the simple way to do it is to simply not have 20 minutes worth of screen time between when we see him. Maybe have 5 to 10 minutes worth of screen time.
All right.
Anyways.
So for me, what I'm getting at is that there's a great moment that kind of summarizes what I really love about kind of T'Challa's kind of the growth here, where basically like how T'Challa learns that something that Wakanda needs to changes its ways. He's kind of weighing the options of, well, this has kept us safe for a long time, and we don't really have to. We're not being forced into taking a position on this. It's just more of like kind of an idea. In this case, he kind of learns something that ethically kind of really gets him to that point where I love his reaction all throughout the movie. His reaction of, in 2 places specifically, his reaction of learning Killmonger's origin, of learning the truth about Killmonger, of learning what happened to young Eric. Mm-hmm. And I love the horror of which is when Forrest Whitaker's character, when Zuri kind of tells him, the tragedy of Killmonger, and he's asking like, what happened to the boy? They left him, and just the horror of which like his father, he's put up on a pedestal. Again, in the beginning of that movie, I won't go into it because we went into this in the spoiler cast, right? But yeah, for me, it was a big fan servicey moment of like seeing the King T'Chaka in the Black Panther suit, kind of fulfilling how the position of Black Panther is passed down from king to king, and just seeing him in the suit for me was one. If I had to pick one favorite moment from that movie, I'll pick that opening scene and how much resonance that has. But just seeing T'Chaka mostly, and for me, the big payoff of like I think the best moment of acting from Chadwick Boseman for me is when he's in the plane, when he's in the ancestral plane. Was in the ancestral plane. That's the Civil War reference too, of like the living, as we see with the whole like, hey, you can still communicate with the dead in the ancestral plane. Mm-hmm. Is when he has that conversation with his father, a pointed conversation with his father, and it's this moment that really hit me on the second time even harder than it did on the first, and it made me fall in love with the performance on this, where his father, he's questioning his father and what happened, you killed your own brother, and what about the boy? And his father says, and this way that just feels so. It feels like not as dramatic a version, but it feels as effective as the whole like. It pained me, Peter, when I put that tumor in your mother's head. Like it's kind of a moment like that, but not as severe and like kind of like awe-striking. It's a moment of just.
But at the same time, I feel like it's more subtle. You know what I mean? Because I've heard people complain for valid reason that the moment in Guardians Volume 2, it's like, if Ego would have just kept that little fact to himself, maybe the whole converting Peter thing would have gone a little smoother. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and my point is, you have a moment of like in T'Challa's shoes, you can feel like kind of the ringing of that moment where his father's right. And it's such a callous. It's like a callous, but you don't know you're being callous type thing, where he just says, "We had to protect the sea. We kept it secret for Wakanda. Like he would have discovered our secret." When he says that, you see on Chadwick Boseman just like the horror, which like the man that he's held up, the man he's idolized, the man he's looked up to, the man he's trying to honor. His whole movie is about him trying to honor his father and trying to be diplomatic and try to be a good man while being king. That's his father's challenge to him at the beginning of the movie, and just saying to him like, the man who I took this challenge for, he's the man who I did all of this for, he's who I thought this position was thing of honor. He's telling me, he left that kid behind just to keep this secret. And he says, "You were wrong. All of you were wrong for doing that, for turning their back on." He realizes, oh my God, we were the bad guys. Our ways are hurting people and ruining. We had this problem because of our flawed system. And I love that moment so much, and that's a huge moment for him going forward. And that defines, like, when he's going into battle, it's not like, hey, I'm the good guy, I'm going to pummel the bad guy because he's going to hurt people. No, it's I have to face the shame. I have to have the responsibility that, the kind of, I gotta be the bigger man of Wakanda here, and just in the face of everything that we've done, I gotta face the sin of our own making firsthand. Mm. It's a guilty battle in the best of ways. It's a guilty battle. He tries not to go through it, leading to that beautiful sunset scene.
Oh yeah.
The sunset, again, showing mercy to his enemy, and like, it didn't have to be this way. I'm so sorry. And I've gone on about it the Who Are You? Want to talk about Who Are You? You know, the ending, very ending, like the kids in the Oakland, all the Oakland stuff.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah.
Oakland.
That's one of my favorite endings of any MCU movie, Dragon. I've made this point before in the spoiler cast, but I'd say outside of Guardians Volume 2, I just love how full circle that is, and, you know, what it says about the cultural significance of the movie. Of course, me being a Bay Area resident, Dragon, one of the things is, like, Oakland is always portrayed in such a negative way in spite of having such a strong culture behind it. And I've got to admit, even I on the podcast have been kind of guilty about it, because in Inside Out, I've joked like, yeah, damn straight, you don't want to end up in Oakland. You know, that's like the climax. Like, oh no, if Riley ends up in Oakland, it's all over. You know what I mean? Like, I've joked about that, but really, the people of Oakland it's such a proud culture.
Yeah,
And
Coogler's from Oakland.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Fruitvale Station, of course. Have you seen Fruitvale, Dragon?
No, I have not seen Fruitvale.
Oh, well, I mean, it's a great movie, but just be prepared to be punched in the goddamn gut. I'll tell you that much. But
like, Panther called it in the chest.
I mean, that movie got to me. Like, that movie, I was pissed for a week after that movie. Anyways.
That's a recommendation. You're going to be really mad after you see this movie, but watch it.
I'm serious though. I was like that. I mean, it's definitely not like a you know. I don't.
Anyway, we're going on a Fruitvale tangent. You were okay. So the ending for I always felt like a Christopher Reeve. I spoke to this on Spoilercast. I always felt like kind of like a Christopher Reeve, like kind of big. Again, I know the movie was more in line with the kind of like Wonder Woman in terms of like kind of representing something that has been represented before, and just kind of
Wonder Woman itself is kind of Christopher Reeve-esque. So
I mean, sure, I mean, it's all under that. I'm just saying it just felt like I've gleaned over my second favorite moment of Black Panther, again, short of the opening. Again, so poetic. The opening and the ending are my favorite moments, but the ending, it's just such a great moment because it was a symbol of what T'Challa wanted to do with it, kind of just like bring it to the bring it to the public, you know, and having it inspire kids, and just these, you know, these kids from Oakland, they're coming up to it and like they're in awe of it. It's like it's a visual symbol you don't see every day. It's like communicating the message of who are you, of what I loved in the advertising, the whole step into the spotlight thing. Like it's visually stepping into the spotlight. It's completely reverse of what the opening was of, you know, that ship was being obscured and it was about the secrecy in Oakland. It was a perfect, just kind of full circle ending, again, without the who are you, because it's not, you don't know what he's going to say necessarily. He could say if him just saying he's the Black Panther wouldn't make a lot of sense to these kids until he explained it. But you know, like, what is he going to say? It doesn't matter what he's going to say because he's already said it in that action itself. So it's.
And just really quick, Dragon, you know, the first post-credit scene, I absolutely think that is kind of like it's the most important political statement in the whole movie, boiled down into a sentence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we need to build bridges, not barriers.
Simply put, that's kind of like the thesis statement that you hang that whole movie on.
It is, and again, that's what the crux of the movie is. But again, not spelled out until that kind of that I Am Iron Man kind of big coming out the UN scene, and it's
right.
And you're right. I love that it's a political statement without being on the nose about it. I love that it doesn't spell it out, but it's definitely there, and you can definitely.
It's more on the nose than other things in the movie. I'll say that much, but not in a bad way.
I mean, I love that we didn't jam that into the movie. Saved it for like the end, or if not,
That's what I'm saying. The fact that it's post credits makes it more palatable.
That's the thing. It's like that's the classy way of broaching that.
Right.
And again, it does thematically tie into everything, so it doesn't feel like out of left field or anything. It just feels like, okay, this is like what we're saying in a public way, so it has some resonance. So it's good.
Okay. All right. So that leaves us with the impact today, Dragon. So, of course, as I already kind of echoed in my opening statements here, the excitement for this movie, Dragon, I feel very blessed to be living in the Bay Area when this movie comes out because of the Oakland connection, because it gives this movie such a hometown pride element to it. It's, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like even though I'm not part of the African culture or the African American culture or anything, but I am part of Bay Area culture, and I know the people, I know what that culture is like, and so for me, it still feels empowering, especially because, like I said, Oakland in general can be portrayed in a very negative kind of like slum ghetto type of way, and I can be guilty of perpetrating that atmosphere. But really, this film is, I don't mean to go on about Oakland. It's just it's just kind of like the impact that the film has on me personally. But it's just, it warms my heart that like I said, there was one event, Dragon, there was one event that made me really uncomfortable about the way that the public would perceive this film for like a hot second. And that was when the first negative review came out on Rotten Tomatoes, and it went from 100% to a 99%. And like a small vocal minority of people lost their shit over that. And I was like, oh boy, like, are we really going to be like the opinion police about this thing? The fact of the matter is, Dragon, I kind of got frustrated about that a little bit with Wonder Woman, where Wonder Woman's a good movie. I feel like even the conversations I was having at the event, you know, people were kind of like, oh man, Wonder Woman was good, but Black Panther was amazing. You know, it's like Black Panther, the movie itself kicks so much ass that really it kind of like any criticism that, like, I almost kind of tend to agree with the people that are chastising the guy who gave it a negative review, to tell you the truth, not to police opinions or anything. You know, all film is subjective, but this film is a cultural revolution. It really is, and it's such a cool feeling to be a part of it, especially, you know, being in the Bay Area and everything, and having a place so close to home be so tied to this movie and this cultural event. Again, I want to emphasize 200 million opening weekend. That's still unreal.
I think you're going to like this, Tiki. I found out kind of, well, again, it's a matter of time before this can be easily said. Let's just say it's, it did what Justice League's end numbers were within roughly 10. Well, okay, sorry, I keep thinking worldwide, but sure, let's just, yeah, whatever.
Domestically, it did what Justice League did in 4 days, in 4 freaking days.
And impressively, worldwide, it did that within roughly, you know, like 10. It's a matter of time before it's like more than 10 days, but, you know, be like they did the numbers of what Justice League did by the end of its run worldwide. Mm-hmm. You know, within less than like 2 weeks.
And Dragon, like I say, it's like I would have never, in my wildest dreams, when this movie was first announced, I would have thought, I made this point before on this movie, I would have thought, like, yeah, it'll open strong, but, you know, I would thought, like, 150 million opening weekend for a character like this would be impressive. 200, it's still unreal to me that this is one of the top 5 highest grossing movies opening weekend of all time. Like that, I still have to kind of wrap my head around that in a positive way, because it just goes to show how far we've come in, you know, in nerd culture and in embracing Marvel and embracing different genres and embracing different and very forward-thinking takes on the superhero genre and characters that aren't your Spider-Mans, aren't your Batmans, aren't your Supermans. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that movie definitely opens some doors now. Like, you know, we can get, like, down the line, I could see, you know, DC kind of gets its heads on straight. You know, we get, like, a Static movie. We get Blue Beetle. You know, that'd be kind of
getting its head on straight. I mean, that's a whole different conversation, buddy.
I'm just saying, additional, like, you know, on the DC side, you know, we have, like, Static being kind of, like, basically kind of DC's version of, like, the Black Spider-Man, which we kind of have with Miles Morales on the Marvel side. You'd have Blue
Beetle. Of course, you know, not to our own horn, I'm pretty sure we're planning on covering the DC side of the Black heroes with next year.
I hope
we sure that's the plan.
Hey, I'm down for that plan if you are. Yeah.
All right. Just kind of, you know, just because we're getting towards the end, kind of.
Well, we don't know what the specifics are of like how we're gonna, you know, choose our DC. Well, yeah, it was DC broadly. Yes, DC.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And of course, you know, we have other characters like Moon Knight and War Machine. You could always see movies of those guys. But this kind of opens doors for like other minorities and other characters, definitely.
Miles Morales, of course.
Yeah, who again we're going to kind of like test the waters with this year.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, Dragon, how do you feel about the movie's impact?
Well, the impact, believe me, I could open up some moral platitudes, but, you know, I think Tiki summed that up well enough with what we were talking about, with the impact of the movie there. But for me, looking at Black Panther, looking at all, just taking not just the movie, the whole ball of wax here with that character, is that, you know, Black Panther, he's not as simple as, you know, like a Batman, Superman, or Captain America, but by the same token, he's an icon all the same, you know, and that's a lot of it in part, you know, it's stemming from the name, Black Panther it's a powerful statement, and it's a movement, and it's it's underlining kind of a what if history could be rewritten. You know, that kind of that Killmonger kind of philosophy or prospect, if you will. It's kind of that. It's kind of a balance. Black Panther kind of strikes a balance between what kind of just in name itself is what kind of Killmonger and T'Challa kind of combating philosophies are like. You know, Killmonger's philosophy of like where we go at the end of him with the movie, where it's bury me in the water, like with the slaves who jump before being led away in chains. It's a really profound ending line for Killmonger, and Black Panther. Just with a name that powerful, you can interpret that as like, okay, so this is like a future what if, like what if, the African people back then had the technology that we fantasize about, with the Afrofuturism. And T'Challa is, he's showing why you can. T'Challa is about moving forward, where Killmonger is about hanging on to the anger, and I think that's the strength there. Where the guy's actually earned that title, T'Challa. He's showing that you can move forward and not kind of fuel yourself with hatred, going backwards in your thinking. Black Panther represents kind of the hope of progress, kind of the heroic idea of not succumbing to anger and rage like a Killmonger, anger and revenge like a Killmonger. And as we see in Civil War, he graduates from revenge to moving past it, to moving, doing the responsible thing, going the more diplomatic route. But at the same time, again, with that kind of that ending I was getting at with Killmonger, he's not being subservient to anyone. He's not, again, Wakanda, he's like Black Panther, he's on his own terms, he's all for progress, he's all for outreach, but still holding all the cards. And I think that shows, he joins the Avengers. And when he's with the Avengers, he's like it's like a UN of heroes, like characters from all sorts of likes with all sorts of different backstories. You have a guy from Asgard, you have a guy who has like a Jekyll Hyde thing going on. You have a Russian ambassador of sorts. We have a kind of money in New York. We have a kid from Brooklyn. We have all these sorts of different kind of flavors, like again a UN of heroes. And we have Black Panther amongst the ranks, with that representing this great nation, the king of this great nation, and Black Panther, aside from the cool technology, the world building, the clever occupation as king, he's power in the Marvel sense, where it means something. Like Captain America, you're compelled with T'Challa before he's Black Panther. It's like the good heart metaphor. It's like having the good stuff inside of you. He's a man before he's a mantle. He's a man before he's an ideal, before he's just what that suit or what that gimmick represents. I care about T'Challa as much as in a way that I care for Steve Rogers. I care about the ethical guy. I care about the guy who just kind of has all of this thrust upon his shoulders, or the guy's going to do the right thing. And again, he embodies power with emphasis on how to responsibly wield it, which again I think is the difference between Black Panther the character versus Black Panther the movement to a degree, where again the character does represent that Marvel ideal of that you can have power, but it's about using it responsibly. In a way, again, kind of combining how he is a combination of all these Marvel characters, like your Iron Mans and your Captain Americas, and very much a Spider-Man, not just like the mask kind of fully covers him, and it could be anyone under that mask, but in a way of he takes the recognizable Marvel dilemmas, that all these characters face. He takes those recognizable Marvel dilemmas and kind of the selling points of those characters, yet somehow raises the bar of how do you approach that, looking at the world today, looking at things today. So it's always like a fascinating balance, and like a guy who's smartly wielding power within the Marvel universe and knowing how to do that. It's always like a great balancing. I think it's what I really take away from Black Panther at the end of it. He's a character who believes in progress, who is he's T'Challa before he's Panther, and who again he's just endlessly cool and fascinating as a character. That as I remarked before, and I'll end it here, is that with going into the movie, I remember I was the day of the movie, the day I was seeing the movie. I kind of had this conversation, like probably like an 11-year-old kid. I was at my place of business, and we just kind of we were, had Civil War on. We were just kind of he was all geared up and ready to see Black Panther. He remarked to me he was going to see it that very day with his father, and
Nice, nice.
and he and I were geeking out about the MCU. Not we talked about Black Panther, but again, but also like, I was telling him some stuff about Black Panther and the stuff I had found out like a few days beforehand about the guy, and kind of we were just kind of gearing our hopes and like geeking out. We were having such a great time with it, and we were just like, oh my god, yeah, in the MCU it's great. And they're
Like, and I had a very similar experience with a kid around that age with the original Guardians.
yeah, talking about there's going to be Infinity War and like all these possibilities, and it's kind of a I just love seeing that that kids getting into Marvel today and just getting into getting the Black Panther and just having that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's the Black Panther. He holds up tremendously well, and it's always it's really hard to get Black Panther wrong in many respects. And he's been consistently good. And again, he is essentially he's the African Superman for a reason. But again, he's not an African Superman. He's Black Panther, quite simply.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's all for now, folks. Until next time, when we talk about the heroes who made the leap from page to screen, showing us a world not simply black or white, but brimming with color, as well as character.
With our next installment of Black History Heroes.
Wakanda forever!